So I'm here with Austin, so thank you for joining us. We have asked you 2 years in a row to come join us, but we couldn't make it, but I'm glad we get to stop
We figured it out.
We did. Your book was amazing to me.
Thank you.
Very hard to read,
yeah,
if I'm really honest. Challenging, I would say, at a heart level, at a friend level.
Yeah. Did you throw it across the room?
No.
Okay. I'm counting the number of people who were just like, needed to chuck it.
I never threw it. No, it was real though.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful to sit with you today. The opening line of the book says, sometimes white people are exhausting.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm a white guy. Talk to me about that.
Are you unsure?
I mean, you tell me, right?
So I'm in a lot of predominantly white spaces as a black woman, and when I was writing this book, I was trying really hard to make every single statement as true as I could. I wanted it to be a candid book. I wanted it to be unlike your typical like kumbaya, let's just all hold hands, writing the word unity over and over and over again. You know, I wanted it to be honest about the experience. And I feel like I could have said white people are sometimes frustrating, or sometimes make me angry, or sometimes I love what we build together, but I feel like the truest statement is that white people can be a little exhausting. And I think it's because white people don't often know they have a culture. It's like everybody else has a culture. So like black folks, they have a culture, and Asian folks, they have a culture. Like everybody has a culture except white people. White people are just normal, but you're not. You're normal for you, but me and black culture, we do something different. And so that's normal for me. And when white people don't realize that they have a culture, that can be very exhausting.
It was interesting to read that to get started though, because it was kind of like, oh, here we go, right?
I was imagining people like picking it up in their local bookstore and opening it and going, oh.
I'm gonna put that back, right? One of my favorite chapters in your book that I felt like was a new, for me, put me in a different seat, I would say. Whiteness at work.
Yes.
Talk us through that concept.
Chapter for a lot of people.
It is a tough chapter. I mean, explain to others what that concept
Yeah, so
was.
we started talking about how white folks have a culture and they don't always realize that they have a culture, right?
Yes.
And white culture doesn't look the same everywhere. And so I think this is why sometimes white people are like, I don't understand what you mean by white culture.
They don't have that identity.
Right, exactly. So there are places where being really community-minded and living together and, you know, working and living in the same neighborhood, right? Like there's that almost like hippie, hippie white, right?
Sure.
White culture. There's white culture that is like business, climb the ladder, you know, how much power and influence do you have?
Sure.
Right? So white culture can look different. It's not that white culture is the same everywhere. It's just that when white culture is predominant, when your board is white, when your leadership is white, when your funders are white, when white culture is dictating the standard by which I have to operate, that is whiteness at work. So, for example, I love teaching and training and giving workshops, but you may have noticed I'm not like a super like professional, formal, right? Like, people ask for definitions and I'm like, I don't have a definition for you. Like, let me tell you a story, right? So the way that I come packaged in order to do trainings and to teach comes in a very specific way. It's pretty black. It's very narrative driven, right? Like it's Black Preacher.
Sure.
Right? That's how I roll. But if I was in the white organization that was like the leadership driven, right? The way I come packaged would not be.
It doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit.
Sure.
And it wouldn't be celebrated, and I would get poor marks, and I would get a performance review that says, you need to work on this, you need to work on this, you need to work on this, even though for me, this is normal. And if I was in a black work environment, it would be appreciated, and other folks would be expected to be more like me, right? And so whiteness doesn't always realize that the standard it has created is cultural as opposed to right.
So where do you go from there?
You know what?
Because there's a culture of that. And to be really honest with you.
Yes, please.
To be really honest with you, it's hard to change that culture.
It's very hard to change that. Well, one, it's hard to want to change it.
Sure.
And it's hard to change any culture, right? It's hard to change any system. The reason you set up a system is so that it runs by itself.
Sure.
That's why you have a system, right? And so to suddenly decide we're not going to run the system the same way,
That changes how it operates.
changes everything.
Sure.
And so, one, I think vision has to be cast for the change. I think people need to understand, why are we changing things? And I feel like so often what happens is when the person at the top has the vision, they don't explain it. They just say, okay, we want a 20% quota increase in the people of color and everyone is like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What's happening here? What are we doing? How is that going to work? As opposed to starting with, I sense that our culture enjoys the performance of whiteness. And I want us to increase and value a greater level of diversity.
If we are serving the city of Atlanta
Yes.
and our community is not diverse,
Hello.
then are we really serving the city of Atlanta? Right? I think that was the starting point,
That's right.
and we have a long way to go.
That's right.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
But it was kind of, I think that in some way, what you were saying, like I think that was for me as a leader, realizing that we needed to make a shift.
And you know what I think about a lot, Jeff, is that even though the work is hard, that doesn't mean that it isn't also joyful and invigorating and life-giving. Like I think about marriage. Marriage is hard.
Sure.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
Raising kids, hard, right?
Yes.
Dealing with your parents as they get older, hard.
Yeah.
Having a job, hard. Like there are lots of things that we do that are hard. That doesn't mean we don't take delight in them.
So let's say you were talking with an African-American woman that is in a culture like that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What would you say to her?
Oh, so many things. First, I would want her to talk to me. I would want her to unpack her experiences. I would want her to see if she has language for how the organization has treated her. Because so often it's not subtle because white folks are nice. And it can be really hard to pinpoint what is happening here, right? So if we go back to my example of like being a teacher and a trainer, but that not being valued, the way that I do it not being valued, right? A white person would never say to me, what you're doing is horrendous, right? That's because that's not nice. What a nice white person would say is, you have so much potential. And that sounds really good to me. Like, yes, thank you. Thank you for seeing the potential in me. But what is meant isn't, Austin, if you continue to do what you're doing as you do it, you're going to be amazing one day. What they mean is, I see potential for you to do it like me.
The way that I do it, yeah.
That's right. And then I would ask about self-care. So are you twerking in the mirror? How many times have you listened to Beyonce's Lemonade? Right? Like I would have lots of self-care questions.
Good.
And then I would say, do you still feel called to this organization? Or is it time for you to take your gifts and your talent and your skills and move on?
Yeah.
And Black women are loyal. Black women are so loyal, especially if they believe in your potential to change the organization. If they believe in your potential to move hearts and minds on your board or of your funders. If they're convinced that you care about this, they'll lay it all down.
So if I was sitting with someone that looked like you,
Right.
or if you were sitting with someone that looked like you, and they were angry.
Yeah, I would say I understand. I would say I understand. And I would also say, what are you doing with that anger? Because particularly for Black women, we're told that we're not allowed to be angry. We're told that we need to tone it down, that we need to be nicer, that we need to be more civil, that we need to tone it down. And I would say, no, anger is fuel for good, as long as we choose it to be fuel for good.
Wow.
So I think about the civil rights movement,
Sure.
right, which we all applaud. And there's this idea that the folks who were marching in the streets were like, I don't know, happy. Like, I don't even know what emotion I would attribute to
Right,
it.
because of the passiveness
Right.
mentality. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I'm pretty sure those folks were angry.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure they were tired of being in the back of the bus. I'm pretty sure they were tired of the restroom situation. I'm pretty sure they were tired of being relegated to the balcony of the movie theaters. I think they were tired of not being able to go to the swimming pool. Like, I think they were angry. And the way they fueled that anger was through protest. The way we fuel our anger might look different than it did in the 60s, but it hasn't changed the fact that anger can be used for creativity. It can be used for good. And so I don't want Black people to shy away from that. And I don't want the white folks who are also angered by injustice to shy away from it either. I want it to create connection points so that we can think more creatively about the world that we want instead of the world that is.
So what is the world that you want?
Oh man, I want a world so filled with equality that the wage gap is non-existent. I want the mortality rates between white women and Black women who are having children to disappear. I want the wealth gap to go away. I want home ownership rates to be the same, right? Like, I want a genuinely equal world.
Then you start hearing someone else say something. How do you begin?
Yeah. So at first, Black folks experience this all the time, right? When we're around white folks and we're like, "But what kind of white are you?"
Right.
You're trying to figure you out, like,
Sure.
right? But white folks, when their eyes suddenly become open, aren't always aware of who else's eyes are open. Because everyone has been silent and nice. And so white folks are like, oh my goodness, does anybody in my life know this other than me, right? And it becomes very isolating. And so one of the reasons why I encourage white folks to speak up, even if you're brand new, is because you need to know who are the other white folks in your life who are already on board too. Because white folks are people. And humans need connection.
Sure.
And so knowing who else is on your side, who else is also trying to wake up, who else is reading books, who else is watching movies and documentaries, eliminates that isolation and lets you know that you're not alone. You're not the only white person who gets it. You're not the only one who wants to see change in the organization. You're not walking this road by yourself. So that's one thing that's really, really important. And then I would say you have to go slow with folks because everybody has a starting place. Everybody. I wasn't born knowing about the civil rights movement and racial justice, right? Like, I worked hard to know whatever it is that I know, and I'm still working hard, right?
So education.
Yeah, and white people don't get to cheat. You don't, right? Like, I had to work hard. I had to read many books. I had to go get a degree. I had to be in conversation. I had to travel the country. I had to, right? Like, I did a lot of work for this. White folks are gonna have to be prepared to do a lot of work too.